Well, I kind of described this a little bit earlier, but basically, my experience with forensic accounting is just looking at every expense and reviewing expenses, needed expenses. I shared with you a little bit of what we discovered with 59% of budgets going over budget and determining why did you go over budget, and looking at those types of instances. And I wish I could say there was a common reason, but there wasn't a common reason for many of those overages. A lot of it was just people not taking ownership and accountability for their budgets. And that's one of the things that we really did, was implement accountability and ownership for your budgets. Not only are you empowered to build your budget, but you need to stay within budget, but it needs to be realistic and that sort of thing. The other thing that we do is every new position or position replacement, and this ties to forensic accounting, is reviewed before being replaced. There's a formal review. Is it cheaper to do? Is it less expensive to use part-time help? Is it less expensive to use student labor? How can we fill this position? Is this position, can it be have additional duties for another position that's open? And so, because majority of our costs, obviously, and the same with you, are in benefits and salaries, and really trying to keep those affordable. So that's kind of, everything's reviewed and extensively reviewed. Any request for a new position is thoroughly examined. But we also look at program viability is another way that we employ some forensics accounting, is what does it cost per FTE to run this program? And we know that to the penny for every one of our programs, for allied health, nursing, CNA, nursing, PN, our bridge program. We know the cost per FTE for every one of those programs. And those are figured in any time we're doing a program fee review or a salary or replacing a position. I think one of the things, I'll go back to the strategic planning process, is I heard very much from our community is we were offering concurrent credit or dual credit in only 2 of our 18 service area high schools. So there was very much a community need to offer concurrent credit in all 18 of our high schools. Now this was kind of a challenge for us because some of those high schools had 300 students in them, very small, very rural. And you also know that it's hard often to find a qualified instructor. So one of the things that we did is we got creative and said, why don't we offer a couple of these online and do it online, and then that way we took 3 of our smaller high schools and those students went to a computer room each day during that designated time. We had one instructor that did the online courses for 3 high schools. And that was one way that we were able to be responsive to our community needs. The other thing that we're doing now, and we just started it in January, is I had an area high school that was very small. Arkansas has this provision that if you drop below a certain number, you will be forced to consolidate with someone else. So the superintendent got really creative and went and recruited and has several foreign exchange students. We're talking almost 30 at this one particular school. However, any of you that know anything about foreign exchange students, our high school structure is not, they've already finished high school in most instances. And so what we're doing is those students are now dual enrolled at North Ark, and they're getting college credit. They're at the college and not at the high school, but she is still able to have those students with her. So those are the other community need I heard was the 4-year partnerships. We want 4-year partnerships. FedEx is very important to our community. We cannot lose FedEx Freight. They're one of the largest employers. And the CEO in Harrison, he came to me and he said, we give incentives for our employees to get higher degrees. And we want that. It's part of their whole business model. And so one of the things that we did is grow our 2+2 partnerships from, I think we had 32 when I arrived, to over 40. And a lot of them are in transportation logistics. We don't benefit, but FedEx benefits, and that's important. We do have a 2-year logistics degree, but many of their employees already had that. So we have probably, of the 80, I would say almost half apply to the needs at FedEx for those 2+2, where the employees there can finish a bachelor's degree without ever having to leave because they work. And they do shift work. So I think those were really two big examples because, you know, people said, why are you building all these 2+2 programs that really don't benefit the college? Well, they benefit FedEx, and that's important to us to help them as well. Hopefully that gives you some idea. I'm trying to be a little bit more succinct because I have lots of stories.
Actually, can I ask a quick follow-up? Could you tell us a little bit more about the 2+2, the second half of that? How is it being delivered to the students locally?
They're all online.
It's all online.
Well, not all. I would say some of the nursing 2+2s we have, they're not online with Cox Health and others, but all of a majority of them are with online with like Franklin University or other institutions. Criminal justice with ASU is not online. There's just a small handful where the second year isn't online. But those the ones I'm talking about specifically are they don't leave. They don't have to leave. We have a lot of articulation agreements with four-year institutions, tons. But these are you can get a bachelor's degree without leaving. And so some are face-to-face, but a majority are online because that's what I heard from the community. Well, what I heard is we want Norfolk to be a four-year institution, but what they really meant is we need to get four-year degrees without leaving. And it really did impact our two largest employers, the hospital and FedEx. They were the ones that really were wanting those opportunities for the four-year degree. One of the things we're really looking at now, though, is an applied Bachelor of Science in Nursing to help fill that gap because there's a huge need. And we call it applied because then the 4 years don't get so upset, but it's a bachelor's in nursing. But you put applied in there and it sounds better. So, well, you know, as I mentioned, we look at the strategic plan annually, and they provide feedback, obviously, of what they want to see done differently. But how the board evaluates its effectiveness each year on several metrics, not only the monitoring reports, but the effectiveness of meetings, lengths of meetings. Are they getting the information they need? So they do kind of like a little survey, a 360, where they evaluate themselves as a board effectively. And then they also evaluate, a portion of that is the board meetings. And I take that information and then we'll use that to improve the board meetings. One of the feedback that we got is that they heard so much data they want to hear more of the highlights from the college. And so one of the improvements we've made this last year is each board meeting a program is highlighted. And they get 10 to 15 minutes to talk about their program, whether it's ag, heavy equipment. And so that's been a really nice addition. But every year at the advance, we review and that information, and then we'll make those changes. And I think doing the highlights, the program highlights, has been really beneficial. What they used to do was people would do reports. And unfortunately, what that did was kind of open the door for the board to kind of say, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, when it was more of a report. But now it's just a highlight of a program, and they don't really get too far down in the weeds. Well, everybody experienced a huge increase in students in 2009 and 2010, an unplanned increase. So that factored into many things that we're still trying to recover from now as higher ed institutions. And I'll give you an example. Is we had that spike, we went and hired a lot more part-time faculty or more faculty. And when I arrived at North Ark, and I'm going to use them as an example, and I think maybe CAC may have suffered from this a little bit, we had the same number of faculty in 2011 when it started to decline in 12 that we had when we, and staff, in 2009 and 10. And what portion of that, there was 8% of that was added because of the economic increase. So one of the things we had to do is get back to pre-2009 levels. And that's the conversation we had, is what is our capacity and capability, not only facility-wise. So we started having these discussions about what is the college's capacity and capability, what is an optimal number, and what is our optimal enrollment. It wasn't about going and getting more students, because retention plays into that as well. So we developed what is called the Realistic Expectations Enrollment Plan, because the return on our investment in keeping a student is much higher than going and getting a new student. So all of those factors played into what's program capacity. So some of our programs we can't, nursing. How do we grow nursing? One of the things we did was develop a multidisciplinary health simulation center. And I don't know if you have one of those, that enables us to have more students and do more clinicals on campus for all of our allied health programs. So that was a strategy. So we came up with some clear strategies. Another was to really reach out to group of students, and you do this with your 8th grade promise, that maybe didn't think they were college material. So we went to our largest providing high school and said, would you consider making a North Ark application part of the graduation requirement for your students? And they said sure. So now every high school student in that high school fills out a North Ark app, and they get a letter before they graduate saying, congratulations, you've been accepted in North Arkansas College. And I guarantee you, a large portion of those students didn't even think they were college material. We also do a lot more financial aid workshops. So we developed some key strategies to get to our optimal enrollment. We didn't talk about more students, because that was the conversation. That puts too much pressure on your recruiters, your counselors. They feel like they're solely responsible, and maybe getting more students isn't what you need to look at. For you, you have a high percentage of part-time students. Your gain could be significant if you can convert just 3% of those part-time students to full-time. So I think it is lots of strategies. I think you get about 40% of the college going rate in your service area. I think the national average is around 50. You know, are there some strategies to get you up to 50? And I know that's one of your goals. But for me, I think a realistic enrollment expectations plan is what a college needs, that talks about your capabilities and your capacity. At some of your campuses, you may not be able to have a certain amount, more than a certain amount. Our North Campus, we cannot grow anymore there without moving programs out and relocating them somewhere else. And so you have to look at, for you, your different facilities and what their capacity is, but also talking about what is your optimal enrollment. And it is a variety of inputs, whether it's increasing an adult population. Your average adult age is 28 and the median's 24. You know, are there more over 25s to get? Maybe a few through some 2+2 or other opportunities of applied BSN. It was an excellent opportunity. But then also converting your part-time to full-time. You have a lot of part-time students that really surprised me when I looked at that number. And if you can take 3% of them and they become full-time, that plays into your realistic expectations, and then retaining your students that you have, because your return on investment's higher. And I feel very passionately about this, because I think too many institutions just say, we've got to go get more students. And they put all their energy into getting more students, where the return on the investment of that is not as high as the other opportunities you have. And I think you have a huge one with your part-time to full-time.
So I think you mentioned the retention figure earlier. You went from 40% to 88%.
Fall to spring.
Fall to spring. And then what was the outcome of the enrollment plan you just talked about? What did they actually do to your enrollment?
We have increased our enrollment in specific areas. Concurrent was one that we really wanted to increase, the dual enrollment with the high school. We have increased enrollment probably at our North Campus 2% and overall about 1%. But keep in mind, it isn't just increased enrollment. It's Well, that is just the increased enrollment. The retention figure, I don't have that played in there yet. I'm trying to do the math. It's a formula that we built. One area we wanted to grow, we haven't, was our adults. And what we found, one of our strategies was to put all of our degree programs online that we could, because we didn't have any online. But what we found is we didn't reach more adults with that. We just shifted our traditional students from face-to-face to online, and so now we're having to think of our facilities. And one of the things we're going to do next year is we're going to do an online cohort business management for, you can guess what audience? FedEx, an online cohort logistics where they come to campus and meet, and it's kind of a hybrid because that was an area we didn't see some growth. So some of our strategies, too, are tied directly to programs. So it's a multifaceted, but we did not grow in our adult as we had planned. And I don't remember the numbers. I can share the REAP plan with you, but it was incrementally increasing to our optimal number over the next 6 years. So there was a percentage each year that fed into the traditional, the 25, and then the retention. And all of those played into the numbers.
Okay, so overall, did your overall enrollment sort of go up?
Yes, yes. Overall enrollment went up. The other thing we have to keep in mind, and this doesn't impact you as much, but we get our funding based on student semester credit hours. So it was really important to find a way to not only increase enrollment, but the number of student semester credit hours our students are taking. So all of our degree plans, you guys are already at 14.18. Our average full-time student was just 12.63. And so now 15 is the new full-time is the conversations we have. All of our degree plans are designed around 15. So you can see multiple strategies played into not only increasing enrollment, but increasing the student semester credit hours, because that is huge for our state funding.
I was going to ask you, and then you just brought it up, what would be a specific strategy you would use to convert the part-time to the full-time? Is there others that you're using beyond the 15 is full-time?
The guided pathways. Yeah. We're designing, we have 6 majors, reducing a lot of electives, and they're very structured. And when a student comes in, we approach them and advise them as if they're full-time. They're no longer picking and selecting classes. They come in and they're on an allied pathway. These are what you take semester 1. Whether you're nursing, rad tech, surge tech. I like having allied health people in the room because we can throw all that out. And you all take the same thing. And what's nice about that, and we've reduced developmental ed through the co-requisite model because we were losing so many students that couldn't get to their next sequence. So changes in developmental ed, the very structured pathways, and we're changing placement, how we do student placement as well. We're piloting student self-placement. That we say, well, this is what the cut scores say you should do, but if you want to take college level, you can. And the schools that are doing that are seeing phenomenal results. And so those are some of the strategies. But I will say that the structured academic plans, we've seen a lot more students decide to go full-time versus part-time, because if you came in, you know how advising works. I'm going to go part-time. Okay, well, you probably should take English and math. Well, that's fun, because that's what you need right away. But if you come in and say, I think I want to do something in the health field, here's your first semester, and it's built, and they're more likely to do that because it's very, very structured. I mean, a lot of this research is grounded in, and we have a sociologist in here, in behavioral economics and how people behave. And I use the analogy when I talk about what we've done with the guided pathways. I don't know if any of you have ever eaten at the Cheesecake Factory, and they bring you that menu. It's so overwhelming to me, I just say, I'll have a piece of cheesecake. But I love Chipotle because Chipotle is very, very structured. And that's kind of what we do in higher ed is we give students a Cheesecake Factory menu and say, here you go, pick what you want to do. And what we do with the guided pathways is you can have a burrito, a taco, and it's the Chipotle model. And I like food, so I like to use that analogy. But those strategies have been very successful.
So that guided pathways model is really interesting because I know Tennessee...
Tennessee's doing a lot of it.
Yeah, and their completion rate in their 27 college system is 80%, 80 to 90% versus 11% for the other community colleges.
Well, and Arizona State, they actually have been one of the first institutions to do it. We modeled a lot of our stuff after Arizona State. It is intriguing work. I could talk about it all day long, but you don't have all day. So.